as perfect, complete enlightenment. To this end, I apply my body, speech, and mind to virtue until Buddhahood. I apply my body, speech, and mind to virtue until death. I apply my body, speech, and mind to virtue from today, tomorrow, at this time. All sentient beings equal to the ends of take refuge in the nature of all the bodies, perfect, complete, enlightened activities. To this end, I apply my body, speech, and mind to virtue until Buddhahood. I apply my body, speech, and mind to virtue until death. I apply my body, speech, and mind to virtue from today. It's a hologram. It's a hologram.
You're sleeping.
Pay money now.
Seriously.
Milli Vanilli. Right. Where are my dreads? Yeah, okay. Page 7. Yeah, you have a 15-minute hate towards Dave Gabrielson. Altogether now. All sentient beings equal to the ends of space take refuge in the nature of all the bodies, speech, minds, qualities, and activities of those thus gone in the 10 directions and 3 times. The wellspring of the 84,000 heaps of Dharma, the sovereign of all the noble Sanghas, the glorious and holy kind root and lineage gurus. We take refuge in the assembly of deities in the Idams Mandala. We take refuge in the Buddha Bhagavans. We take refuge in the holy Dharmas. We take refuge in the noble Sanghas. We take refuge in the assembly of Viras, Dakinis, Dharma protectors, and guardians with the wisdom eye. We take refuge in the glorious and holy kind root and lineage gurus. We take refuge in the assembly of deities in the Idams Mandala. We take refuge in the Buddha Bhagavans. We take refuge in the holy Dharmas. We take refuge in the noble Sanghas. We take refuge in the assembly of Viras, Dakinis, Dharma protectors, and guardians with the wisdom eye. We take refuge in the glorious and holy kind root and lineage gurus. We take refuge in the assembly of deities in the Idams Mandala. We take refuge in the Buddha Bhagavans. We take refuge in the holy Dharmas. We take refuge in the noble Sanghas. We take refuge in the assembly of Viras, Dakinis, Dharma protectors, and guardians with the wisdom eye. Till I reach the heart of awakening, I take refuge in the Buddhas all. In the Dharma and assembly of Bodhisattvas too I take refuge. Just as all Sugatas of the past brought to birth the mind of awakening, and in each and every training of Bodhisattvas step by step did dwell. Just so for the benefit of beings I too bring to birth awakened mind, and in each and every training thus step by step I'll train myself like so. Till I reach the heart of awakening, I take refuge in the Buddhas all. In the Dharma and assembly of Bodhisattvas too I take refuge. Just as all Sugatas of the past brought to birth the mind of awakening, and in each and every training of Bodhisattvas step by step did dwell. Just so for the benefit of beings I too bring to birth awakened mind, and in each and every training thus step by step I'll train myself like so. Till I reach the heart of awakening, I take refuge in the Buddhas all. Dharma and assembly of Bodhisattvas too I take refuge. Just as all Sugatas of the past brought to birth the mind of awakening, and in each and every training of Bodhisattvas step by step did dwell. Just so for the benefit of beings I too bring to birth awakened mind, and in each and every training thus step by step I'll train myself like so. In the Buddha, Dharma, and assembly excellent, I take refuge till I come to full awakening. By the merit of my deeds like generosity, may I achieve Buddhahood for beings' benefit. In the Buddha, Dharma, and assembly excellent, I take refuge till I come to full awakening. By the merit of my like generosity, may I achieve Buddhahood for beings' benefit. In the Buddha, Dharma, and assembly excellent, I take refuge till I come to full awakening. By the merit of my deeds like generosity, may I achieve Buddhahood for beings' benefit. May all mother sentient beings equal to space have happiness and the cause of happiness. May they be free of suffering and the cause of suffering. May they not be separated from the happiness free of suffering. May they abide in equanimity, free of attachment and aversion to near and far. May all mother sentient beings equal to space have happiness and the cause of happiness. May they be free of suffering and the cause of suffering. May they not be separated from the happiness free of suffering. May they abide in equanimity, free of attachment and aversion to near and far. May all mother sentient beings equal to space have happiness and the cause of happiness. May they be free of suffering and the cause of suffering. May they not be separated from the happiness free of suffering. May they abide in equanimity, free of attachment and aversion to near and far. By prostrating, offering, and confessing thus, by rejoicing, urging, supplicating too, any little virtue that I have amassed, all I dedicate for full awakening. This ground daubed with fragrant water and with flowers strewn is adorned by Meru and by sun and moon. Seeing this to be a Buddha field, I offer it. May all beings experience this utterly pure land. Om Guru Ratna Mandala Pudza Mega Samudra Saparana Samaye Om. And now the little blue book, the Bodhisattva practices together, 37 Bodhisattva practices. Homage to Lokeshvara. I pay constant homage through my three doors to my supreme teacher and protector Chenrezig, who, while seeing all phenomena and lack coming and going, makes single-minded effort for the good of living beings. Perfect Buddhas, source of all well-being and happiness, arise from accomplishing the excellent teachings, and this depends on knowing the practices. So I will explain the practices of Bodhisattvas. Having gained this rare ship of freedom and fortune, here think and meditate unwaveringly night and day, in order to free yourself and others from the ocean of cyclic existence. This is the practice of Bodhisattvas. Attached to your loved ones, you're stirred up like water. Hating your enemies, you burn like fire. In the darkness of confusion, you forget what to adopt and discard. Give up your homeland. This is the practice of Bodhisattvas. By avoiding bad objects, disturbing emotions gradually decrease. Without distraction, virtuous activities naturally increase. With clarity of mind, conviction in the teachings arises. Cultivate seclusion. This is the practice of Bodhisattvas. Loved ones who have long kept company will part. Wealth created with difficulty will be left behind. Consciousness, the guest, will leave the guest house of the body. Let go of this life. This is the practice of Bodhisattvas. When you keep their company, your three poisons increase. Your activities of hearing, thinking, and meditating decline, and they make you lose your love and compassion. Give up bad friends. This is the practice of Bodhisattvas. When you rely on them, your faults come to an end, and your good qualities grow like the waxing moon. Cherish spiritual teachers even more than your own body. This is the practice of Bodhisattvas. Bound himself in the jail of cyclic existence, What worldly god can give you protection? Therefore, when you seek refuge, take refuge in the three jewels which will not betray you. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. The subduer said, all the unbearable suffering of bad rebirth is the fruit of wrongdoing. Therefore, even at the cost of your own life, never do wrong. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. Like dew on the tip of a blade of grass, pleasures of the three worlds last only a while and then vanish. Aspire to the never-changing supreme state of liberation. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. When your mothers who've loved you since time without beginning are suffering, what use is your own happiness? Therefore, to free limitless living beings, develop the altruistic intention. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. All suffering comes from the wish for your own happiness. Perfect Buddhas are born from the thought to help others. Therefore, exchange your own happiness for the suffering of others. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. Even if someone, out of strong desire, steals all your wealth or has it stolen, dedicate to him your body, possessions, all your virtue, past, present, and future. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. Even if someone tries to cut off your head when you haven't done the slightest thing wrong, out of compassion, take all his misdeeds upon yourself. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. Even if someone broadcasts all kinds of unpleasant remarks about you throughout the 3,000 worlds, in return with a loving mind speak of his good qualities. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. Though someone may deride and speak bad words about you in a public gathering, looking on him as a spiritual teacher, bow to him with respect. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. Even if a person for whom you've cared like your own child regards you as an enemy, cherish him specially like a mother does her child who is stricken with sickness. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. If an equal or inferior person disparages you out of pride, place him as you would your spiritual teacher with respect on the crown of your head. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. Though you lack what you need and are constantly disparaged, afflicted by dangerous sickness and spirits, without discouragement take on the misdeeds and the pain of all living beings. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. Though you become famous and many bow to you, and you gain riches to equal Vaishravanas, see that worldly fortune is without essence and be unconceited. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. While the enemy of your own anger is unsubdued, though you conquer external foes, they will only increase. Therefore, with the militia of love and compassion, subdue your own mind. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. Sensual pleasures are like salt water. The more you indulge, the more thirst increases. Abandon at once those things which breed clinging attachment. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. Whatever appears, own mind. Your mind from the start was free from fabricated extremes. Understanding this, do not take to mind inherent signs of subject and object. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. When you encounter attractive objects, though they seem beautiful like a rainbow in summer, don't regard them as real and give up attachment. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. All forms of suffering are like a child's death in a dream. Holding illusory appearances to be true makes you weary. Therefore, when you meet with disagreeable circumstances, see them as illusory. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. When those who want enlightenment must give even their body, there is no need to mention external things. Therefore, without hope for return or any fruition, give generously. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. Without ethics, you can't accomplish your own well-being, so wanting to accomplish others is laughable. Therefore, without worldly aspirations, safeguard your ethical discipline. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. To bodhisattvas who want a wealth of virtue, those who harm are like a precious treasure. Therefore, towards all, cultivate patience without hostility. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. Seeing hearers and solitary realizers who accomplish only their own good, strive as if to put out a fire on their head. For the sake of all beings, make enthusiastic effort, the source of all good qualities. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. Understanding that disturbing emotions are destroyed by special insight with calm abiding, cultivate concentration which surpasses the four formless absorptions. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. Since the five perfections without wisdom cannot bring perfect enlightenment, along with skillful means, cultivate the wisdom which does not conceive the three spheres as real. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. If you don't examine your own errors, you may look like a practitioner but not act as one. Therefore, always examining your own errors, rid yourself of them. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. If, through the influence of disturbing emotions, you point out the faults of another bodhisattva, you yourself are diminished. So don't mention the faults of those who have entered the great vehicle. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. Reward and respect cause us to quarrel and make hearing, thinking, and meditation decline. For this reason, give up attachment to the households of friends, relations, and benefactors. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. Harsh words disturb the minds of others and cause deterioration in a bodhisattva's conduct. Therefore, give up harsh words which are unpleasant to others. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. Habitual disturbing emotions are hard to stop through counteractions. Armed with antidotes, the guards of mindfulness and mental alertness destroy disturbing emotions like attachment at once, as soon as they arise. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. In brief, whatever you are doing, ask yourself, what's the state of my mind? With constant mindfulness and mental alertness, accomplish others' good. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. To remove the suffering of limitless beings, understanding the purity of the three spheres, dedicate the virtue for making such effort to enlightenment. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. For all who want to train on the bodhisattva path, I have written the 37 practices of bodhisattvas, following what has been said by the excellent ones on the meaning, sutras, tantras, and treatises. Though not poetically pleasing to scholars, owing to my poor intelligence and lack of learning, I have relied on the sutras and the words of the excellent, so I think these bodhisattva practices are without error. However, as the great deeds of bodhisattvas are hard to fathom for one of my poor intelligence, I beg the excellent to forgive all faults, such as contradictions and non sequiturs. Through the virtue from this, may all living beings gain the ultimate conventional altruistic intention, and thereby become like the protector Chenrezig, who dwells in neither extreme, not in the world, nor in peace. Again, anybody who does not have one of these little blue books, please feel free to take one as White Lotus's gift to you. I would guess that tens of thousands of these have been handed out by our main teacher, Garchen Rinpoche. He's had it translated into Mongolian, Spanish, English, Estonian, Ukrainian, Chinese, I think Cantonese, certainly Russian, German, everything. He says that the entire all of Buddha's teachings are contained in this little book, if you know how to read it. It has the advantage of being relatively free of technical terms, but where there are technical terms, there's a reason for those technical terms, and just plunge in. That's how we study. We sort of latch onto what we don't know in order to discover. Even in our prayers, these prayers are amazing how they're, even the order in which they're arranged. It's like a full practice and education outlining the Buddhist path to you. When it talks about, and none of this is kind of just like, poetry. It all has meaning. So in the prayer where it says, may I quickly attain precious, unsurpassed, perfect, complete enlightenment. That's one term in Sanskrit, Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi. It all has deep meaning. And if you go into each syllable, there's meaning there. It's truly remarkable. Buddha said, after I'm gone, I will exist in the letters, meaning the Dharma. And this is something that's a tremendous blessing for us. I came across a a quotation from Richard Feynman. Some of you may know of him. He's passed away. He was a brilliant physicist. He was the man whose testimony showed the what the flaw was in the when the Challenger spacecraft blew up. He presented to the Congressional Committee what the cause was. I mean, he's just a remarkable, clear thinker. But how about this for a quotation? You cannot get educated by this self-propagating system in which people study to pass exams and teach others to pass exams, but nobody knows anything. You learn something by doing it yourself, by asking questions, by thinking, and by experimenting. It's a very Buddhist statement. This is the genius of the Buddhist teachings. I mean, again, remember, after his great enlightenment, the Buddha hesitated to teach because human beings are great at sort of exploiting anything. Human beings are great at twisting what are actually profound teachings so that somehow they're getting rich out of the deal or they have power over other people. It's what human beings do. So what do you do when you're confronted with such a world? And this isn't a partisan thing at all. It's not saying that those other guys are the bad guys. We're all in the same boat. How do you get out of that? So he hesitated to teach, and it was said that only after Indra, the highest god in the Indian conception, appeared to him and said, no, you got to teach. It will be of benefit to some, and therefore through the some, for everyone. So he did, and think of it. I mean, he taught for 45 years, and there were at least 2 assassination attempts. Can you imagine, for teaching, avoid evil, practice good, liberate sentient beings? It shows you the situation that we're in. So this is a remarkable thing. And when he passed away, he said, okay, I'll be living in the letters. And they've over, centuries have honed this down. So the Buddhist teachings are not the thing that we're attaching to. If I can just get everybody to believe this, we're good. No, they're practical. Like he said, my teachings are a finger pointing at the moon. Don't confuse the moon with the finger. The idea is to get beyond those fingers so we don't need to point anymore. But as human beings, we need something pointing out for us. And that's the situation we're in. So for instance, in Thursday night, we've started up again our study. It's really a question and answer and discussion, more of a discussion group than a study group. But we're using this survey of the entire Buddhist path, profound Buddhism, from Hinayana to Vajrayana by Kala Rinpoche. Kala Rinpoche has passed away a number of years ago now, I think 1989 maybe. Great teacher, one of the early lamas to come to the United States, made 3 trips to the United States. The first time he taught self-liberation path, the path of self-liberation. The second time he taught the conventional Mahayana leading to Buddhahood. And the third time he taught the unconventional Mahayana, what's called the Vajrayana, Tantrayana, different terms for it, the diamond path. These are all complete. One doesn't reject the other. It's just that beings have such different motivations and makeup. The thing that strikes me, though, is how fortunate, incredibly fortunate, all of us are, because these teachings are so vast and so complete, and we don't really have a cultural support for them. So to give you an idea, the ordinary Tibetan layperson, they don't know anything about the Dharma, but they have tremendous respect for it because it permeates their culture. And so they know, their Albert Einstein was a Buddhist monk, and their Mother Teresa was a Buddhist monk, and their Newton, and their George Washington, and Abraham Lincoln. I mean, all these people. So they have kind of the confidence in hearing a Dharma teaching, even without knowing, that we do, like with science. I remember, somehow my high school dragged me to some talk at the University of Minnesota when I think I was a junior in high school. And it was by, I can't remember his first name, Theodosius or Dobrinsky. It turns out he's one of the great pioneering geneticists. I didn't understand a word that he said. There I was, just a high school student with a big smile.
But why was I there? Because we all had a faith that he wasn't just spouting gibberish, that what he was saying was subject to criticism. You just didn't do a blind faith kind of thing. But yet you had to engage your mind. You can't just sit back and take it. You can't just sit back and say it doesn't matter. That is the Buddha's path. The Buddha described his path as the middle way between blind faith and blind assertion. The teachings are our tools. It's like our petri dish, our test tube, in which we unveil our own mind. This is the wonder of wonders. So in this book that Kala Rinpoche has, it's very brief actually, and yet there are 200 pages. All right, so we've gotten through page 30. Page 30 is self-liberation. Page 30 is verses 1 through 21 in the little book that we read, the Bodhisattva Practices. So 30 out of 200 pages, you know what that is? In America, the most successful Western Dharma movement are what are called the Vipassana centers. Now, all Buddhism shares Vipassana. Vipassana is it's Latong in Tibetan. It means special seeing. It means the vision of an enlightened mind, not a mind that's completely occluded by our own desires and fears. So page 30, you might say, because they've been tremendously successful. They've done tremendous work on the meditation on the 4 mindfulnesses. But still, page 30, those people have tremendous insight. Someone who completely exhausts that path on these 4 mindfulnesses is said to be an arhat. It means a conqueror, someone who has conquered the afflictive emotions, the painful mind states. So an arhat, a conqueror, it's said that one who is at that level of understanding can actually walk through a solid wall. That's the level of understanding they have. It's said that the arhat can rest for 84,000 eons in a state of seemingly perfect happiness and peace. But then after that extremely long time, after that karma is exhausted, a Buddha appears in their mind and shines light from the heart of the Buddha to the heart of the arhat. And the arhat is suddenly realizes that although they are enlightened, there's this whole world of suffering beings out there who are not enlightened and are suffering, even though their suffering is illusory, but it's real to them. It's said to be, it's like the Bodhisattva, the one who is dealing with the suffering of other beings, is said to be a mother, like watching her infant having a nightmare. She knows the nightmare is totally imaginary, and yet the suffering of the child is real. And so what do you want to do? You want to wake up that child. Well, all these methods for waking up sentient beings, for complete enlightenment, Buddhahood, not just being done with our own suffering. That's the other 170 pages of this book. And so when I find someone like myself, who for whatever reasons, occluded reasons, find myself attracted here, and I realize that I don't have the understanding that you get through page 30. Well, why are we even talking about another 170 pages? The Tibetans have a saying. They say the way of the practice is that you can become an arhat, you can completely liberate yourself, complete self-liberation, and then after this long period of time, you suddenly realize, wait a minute, this isn't complete. There's still suffering sentient beings out there. So it says you cross the river by taking refuge in these teachings and working with them in this experiential way. That's like crossing the river. But then you wake up again, you have to cross another river, the river of the Bodhisattva river, bodhicitta, the motive to benefit others. But the Tibetans say, why cross the river twice, when you can just do it once? If you start out with this motivation, I'm going to liberate all beings, you've already crossed the river, you're on the other side, you're practicing the whole kit and caboodle anyway. And that's an extremely profound thing. When I think of our teacher, Gar Rinpoche, the effort he's put into this place, we're not even part of his organization. And as things happen, as organized happen, he got older and he ended up with a committee running his Dharma center, and they all decided, well, he's not going to come here anymore. Just go to your own, your own organizations we're trying to build up. They're all our friends. They weren't like anything against us at all. Just doing the normal bureaucratic kind of stuff. And Garba Mache said, whoa, I'm so glad that now you're giving me vacations time too. I'm going to go to White Lotus on my vacation. So they all relented and said, okay. What I'm saying is that when you have a great master, why are they putting this energy into a place like America? Kala Rinpoche says here, talking about the self-liberation path, about the type of practice. This self-liberation approach constitutes a tradition of great value and profundity that allows being to obtain individual liberation. However, the state of liberation is not complete awakening. In India, Tibet, Mongolia, China, many Eastern countries, the cultural context permits the engagement on this path. In the West, on the other hand, the practice of self-liberation is far more difficult. This practice requires complete rejection of any worldly involvement, closing the doors of our body, speech, and mind with no interest in ordinary activity and avoidance of all distraction. I do not know what others may think of this, but for these reasons, self-liberation practices appears to me little adapted to the West. So that's page 1 through 30. And here we are, on page 200. So it's immediately humbling. But as you do these practices, you start to see the wisdom of the whole kit and caboodle that the Buddha just presented, because there are so many different human beings and their motivations and their conditionings and everything. But we share, it said, this one nature, and not two in this way. I don't want to get too into the weeds, but basically we share our nature with the earthworms, not only each other, not only different cultures. We share our nature with the heavenly beings, the God realms. So this is extremely profound, and yet it's totally practical. To give you an idea, so we practice mindfulness, right? Mindfulness, the actual word of it means remembering. We practice mindfulness. We have an object of meditation. It can be all sorts of different things. It can be a concept. It can be your breath. It can be a stone. It can be a visualized Buddha. Just all sorts of things can be an object. But why? Because right now our mind is like a pond, which is completely agitated with lots of waves. And the waves that are blowing it are our afflictive emotions and our ignorance. So how do we still that pond? Well, it's through the practice of mindfulness. Mindfulness and then awareness. So mindfulness is, you're going to count your breath up to 10, right? And the next thing you know, you've forgotten you weren't counting at all. You're like a page number 35. You just lost awareness of your mindfulness. So you just bring it back. That seeing your unmindfulness is mindfulness, is awareness. Garba Mache is like you have a little stick of incense, he says it's burning. And you take that little glowing tip and you just stick it on your distractions and they burn up. It's this patience again and again and again and again for years, because it's virtue in its own right. But then once that mind, that pond is calm, for the first time, we can see the reflection of the full moon, just as it is. Now, this is still artificial. We're not seeing the actual moon. We're seeing the reflection of the moon. But that insight alone is enough to transform a life. That collective insight together is enough to transform a civilization. It's that powerful. It's the stuff of mind. And so the Dharma uses different levels of motivation to get different results, you might say. The individual motivation is a good one. I want to stop suffering. And the basic practice is to do no harm. But you have to learn what is harm, what isn't harm. This is how the teachings are so incredibly helpful. But to give you an idea how it changes. So right now, any Buddhist teacher will tell you, don't slam the door. You come in here, you close the door properly. What's properly mean? Well, if you're doing self-liberation practice, you don't slam the door because you're practicing mindfulness. You don't need the extra energy to do what it takes to close that door. So you do it in this very mindful way. If we're practicing the conventional Mahayana, we're still closing the door the exact same way. But now we're not slamming it, because not only is it improper from a self-liberation point of viewpoint, but it's also improper because you're going to disturb everyone. So you're thinking about other people, and instead of just mindly, slamming doors and banging around, you're concerned for others. And then it gets deeper, because you think of all those others as having been your mother in a previous lifetime. And their teachings, Jigten Sumgön's teachings on regarding all beings as your mother. People say in the West, we've had lamas come here and said this about the typical teaching they give, the classical teaching of regarding all beings as having been your mother, as a way to generate the proper motivation that will benefit you. And people say, but I don't like my mother. Welcome to America. But interestingly, this great master, our particular thread of Tibetan Buddhism, founded by Jigten Sumgön, he talked about that even. Because he said that even a mother that has abandoned her child still gave that child life. Still somehow for 9 months, her very body was supporting that child. And because of that, you find yourself at the beginning of the path, the precious human birth. It's the best platform from which to realize our true nature. The gods have true nature, the animals have true nature, the hell beings have true nature, but they're so consumed by one emotion or another that they don't have the proper motivation, or the motivation and the opportunity to do something about it. Whereas humans do. We have enough dissatisfaction and suffering that we want to do something about it. And we also have the capability mentally to do. So not slamming the door because we're mindful for self-liberation, not slamming the door in the conventional Mahayana because we're mindful and proper, but at the same time we're concerned about sentient beings. But then in the extraordinary Mahayana, the Vajrayana, we don't slam the door. Why? Because we don't want to hurt the beings that are living in the door jamb. Now, this is way beyond what American culture supports. People are not going to believe this. But the Vajrayana and the great Mahayana know that this is all mind. That door only exists in your mind. And there are many other kind of beings. The whole universe becomes alive, and that changes your attitude. It's called the practice of pure vision. And it's so pure that it shows us how impure our daily stuff is. We just spend our time living in our distractions. The greatness of this path, the greatness of these tremendously realized teachers, is that it gives you a foundation. You can actually have a reasoned belief in your own true nature and the tremendous powers of it. It's not just a pipe dream. And then through that faith, you keep practicing. And faith is necessary for anything. If you want to repair a car, you have to have confidence, faith that it's repairable. And then you have to go further. You have to find some mechanic who's done it before or seems to have more knowledge than you. We're always taking a leap of faith because I don't know, maybe the guy is just like a psychotic and he's just whatever. But you're testing all the time. Testing is the bodhisattva path. You can't worry about making mistakes. It says that we fall down all the time on the bodhisattva path. This vow that we have to come to enlightenment, this vow that we have to save all sentient beings. And interestingly, when we fall down in our abiding in this great view, we renew it by just taking refuge again. I'm taking refuge, looking for answer to my suffering, and looking for the answer to suffering of all in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. The Buddha, his teachings, and the community of practitioners. When we are cruel to a sentient being, or act as if they hadn't been our mother in a previous lifetime, then we take the bodhisattva vow again. It's like you fall down because we trip on the ground, right? But we get up by pushing off the ground. So we're never forgetting sentient beings. And instead, all of our mistakes become practice. And for the first time, instead of this endless going around in circle with samsara, for the first time, our actual path. We have a path instead of an endless circle. It's using all the same stuff that we're using anyway. We can't escape it. It's our karma. This stuff happens. But what is our reaction to it? It's like Lama Tarchin talked once about, you have a rabid wolf run through the community. Well, it's got to be put down. But what's the mindset? I'm going to kill that goddamn wolf. Or, I'm sorry, wolf, you've been my mother in a previous lifetime, but you're killing people. This is bad karma for you. And so I'm going to take on some bad karma. I'm going to sacrifice myself to kill you in order to prevent the death to all these other people and for you attaining bad karma again and again and again. So it's not avoiding responsibility. This is not some, miracle. It's all reality. And that's the genius of it. So it's tremendously skillful because, all right, we get to the point where we say, well, I can take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. And we can, people can do a prostration. It's like you're going down, you're sort of giving up your pride, and yet you're putting the effort of bodhisattva working for others as you push yourself up. There's something inherently in the body itself that works. It's really amazing. You can do these practices and they seem, I started with such a down the nose view of all these various Tantra practices because, I was into meditation and, this is like for the lower people, it's what we do as human beings. But then if you, for some mistaken reason, you end up doing a whole bunch of prostrations and you suddenly experience the calmness, this is so skillful. It's not us trying to figure out how we can make our ego better, how our ego can be more peaceful, how our ego can have more powerful, how people can think you're really wonderful because you're doing X, 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 X. No, it's like the Dalai Lama says, we have this idea, and actually the English word compassion misleads us somewhat because it's said that we fly to Buddhahood on two wings, wisdom and compassion. But that's a wisdom with a capital W and a compassion with a capital C. It's sometimes wisdom and upaya, skillful means. But skillful means doesn't mean anything to people. So we say wisdom and compassion. But compassion, Dalai Lama says, people think that compassion is me looking down on the poor, suffering sentient beings, which is what we hear all the time in the press and everywhere. But he said, no, it's actually looking up to the sentient beings. I'm here because of the sacrifices you made. I have the ability to go to Buddhahood because of your sacrifices. You're still suffering, and yet I'm here with this opportunity. It's totally upside down. The Dharma is totally upside down from the worldly way, and yet the result of it is worldly happiness. This is the paradox. So we can take refuge in that way. You can make the simple thoughts in your head, say the words. You can do a prostration, even if you're getting a little bit more into it. You can have a Buddha figure. You can imagine the Buddha figures. And again, the whole point of the outer Buddha is so that you can discover the inner Buddha. Like it says in the Kala Chakra Tantra, all beings are Buddhas. Apart from that, there are no Buddhas. So you can do this kind, but then it can get as elaborate as you want. I mean, for instance, in normally there's this axis, you might say, of Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, this horizontal axis that we're taking, perfectly works in a conceptual way. Our ordinary human way, you can argue about it, you can think about it, you can write about it. All these things are wonderful. In the Vajrayana, we add a vertical axis too, of the guru, the yidam, that's the deities, and then the dakinis, these female sky dwellers, sky flyers, who are noted for activity, for dharmic activity. They are the more inner view of Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, but nonetheless, suddenly your visualization has become, or who you're prostrating to has become more articulated, more nuanced, more powerful, really, because you have more specific tools for the specific problem you find yourself with. But then when you do the visualization, you can do it like that. That's a wonderful thing. But you can also, you can imagine yourself with your father standing next to you. And you can imagine your mother standing next to you on the left. So there are the three you together, right? And then behind your father, all the male sentient beings, even including the earthworms, and this vast assembly. And then similarly on the left with the females. So you have this tremendous throng that you are not only leading in taking refuge, but they're supporting you at the same time. So we have the natural human support that we need. So what is this? Well, this is just mental, right? But it shows you we're giving credence to a level of reality, since we don't have everyone there in this material, corporeal way that normally we're so gross, we have to have something like that before we can believe it. You know, I can touch it, I can hold it, I can see it. Now we're doing it with the mind. Well, that's our path. This is nothing other than training the mind. And yet we've all seen the power of the mind. You know, you wake up in the morning, it's like this, it's a sunny day. You're walking outside, just everything is wonderful. The birds are singing, the flowers are coming out. Gee, this is just great. You're in a very peaceful, happy mood. And then you bump into a friend who says, are you gaining a little weight? Where's your mind go? So the power of mind. So the teachings are vast, and they're extremely skillful. And they're all of one piece, actually. So why do you have a great master like Kalu Rinpoche teaching self-liberation? Because it's the Buddhist way. The more you get free from your own self-drama, the more you're able to help someone else. We see this all the time in our ordinary life. We're already doing this, you know? A mother with her child, an employer with an employee, wherever there's an obligation or some recognized connection. You know, I notice in a lot of the work that I do, you know, if you have a single mom on her own under tremendous pressure, economically, socially, when she meets another mom in the same situation, there is an understanding that is not manufactured. It's not fabricated. It's this natural wisdom, and that wisdom is no different than compassion. That's what it is. You really understand someone else's situation. So this is extremely practical and skillful stuff. And yet, it's possible. I have a quote here from Chogyam Trungpa, who passed away some years ago, and said, life is not all that grim. It says, life is painful with an occasional speck of pleasure. We experience sickness, moreover, we get old, and last but not least, we die. Teachings of the Buddha have taught us that what is quite realistic and practical is quite pragmatic. The reason you are sitting on this floor, this earth, is that you're waiting to die. I'm afraid that's the bad news. Whether you're young or old doesn't make much difference. Truth is truth. First you get sick and then you die. Everybody here in this room will eventually die. Nonetheless, we have to do something about that. We are not interested in developing eternity or immortality. For that matter, we are not interested in preventing being sick or preventing being born. Still, we have to do something while we are alive, while we are breathing, surviving, while we see the beauty of the snow, the flowers, blue sky, sunshine, and many other things you can imagine. Enlightenment is possible. We can do it. That is why you are here, to learn about what is known as enlightenment. Enlightenment is like witnessing the brilliant sun for the first time in the morning, or for that matter, seeing beautiful flowers that grow in the woods, frolicking deer that you can envy, a bird flying with its pride, fish swimming, and so forth. Life is not all that grim. In the morning when you brush your teeth, you can see how shiny they are. Reality has its own gallantry, spark, and arrogance. You are here to study life while you are alive, and to study how you can achieve the brilliance of life. The entire Buddhist path is one of shamatha, calming the mind, and vipassana, insight meditation. Calming and insight. The insight comes from a calm mind. It's a two-step process. No matter which Buddhist sect you're talking about, it's the same thing. An object of concentration to calm the mind, and then objectless awareness. The tantric path is, like, as I said, kind of overwhelming for us conceptually because we don't have any experience with it culturally, no support. And yet it's very powerful because it combines shamatha, calming the mind, and insight meditation, vipassana, together. And this is something. So it's said, the Tibetans say that the Tantra, the Buddha didn't teach much of the Tantra. But for the last 1,000 years, we've been in a period where the afflictive emotions, our painful mental states are very rough, and our view is upside down. People see what is suffering as being liberation, and what leads to liberation is leading to suffering. So we're just upside down in how we do things mentally. Therefore, the Tantra is very powerful because it combines both. When you're imagining yourself as the Buddha that you actually are, so it seems like imagination is because we're so occluded, but when you visualize yourself in that same for one thing, it's a body of light. So you're not stuck. I can say, okay, I'm not going to be attached to gold. But if someone comes in here right now and says, gee, here's for White Lotus, here I got $1 million of gold bars. Well, immediately my meditation is upset because I'm thinking, we got to change the insurance limitation on this. We're the police. If somebody comes in here right now, can I jump out the window with that and save it? That's what goes on because I'm living on that level of existence. But if I'm visualizing Tara and she has a golden crown, I don't have any attachment to her golden crown. So we're using our mind in a way that's so skillful, and yet no one's saying don't be attached to gold. Rather, in the process itself, you're using your mind in its natural, unattached, powerful, limitless state. And yet we're still doing form and images of mental form. So we're not saying, let's just be formless. Because how do you do that? We're using form to get beyond form. It is so incredibly skillful. And yet at the same time, the meditation, the awareness, the abiding in even just the sense that I am the deity or the deity is there. That's the concentration. Has the natural effect of calming the mind. But the vividness, to the degree that that is alive for you, not just in a visual way, but in an experiential way, or even in your confidence that this isn't a mistaken thing to do, that is vipassana. So you're doing the two things together. It's extremely powerful. So we have these great teachers like Kalu Rinpoche, like Garchen Rinpoche, who have come here to America sharing these teachings that are really kind of, speaking for myself, beyond my inherent understanding. And yet something resonates that's right. You see how Gar Rinpoche acts when something goes wrong. You see how these people act in ordinary circumstances, the teachings they give, the examination of their life. And you see and experience the benefit in your own life, even just a little bit. So one last story and the power of this. Conventional Mahayana, right? We got to practice for other beings, and we have to consider beings as having been our mother in a previous lifetime. And Dalai Lama talks about the danger that happens with hatred generated by this great anger that erupts. It's like a volcano. And the antidote to that is compassion, certainly, but patience with other sentient beings. So the practice of patience. Books written on patience. You can, so many meditations on patience, generating patience in the mind again and again and again and again and again. So we had one member here who had been a member for 6 months, and he was a psychiatrist. And this is before the days of cell phones and that, and he would call his mother once a week. And he said he just had this thing. He was always in fights with his mother. I guess that's what psychiatrists do. But nonetheless, he told me he'd been trying to practice patience like for 6 months, right? And he found himself in a call with his mother, and he was yelling and screaming at his mother on the phone. And it suddenly occurred to him, I'm supposed to be practicing patience. And it just floored him. Because what happened? He kept on going with the vitriol. But it was different because he had this in his mind. He realized what I'm doing is false. He had the karmic energy. You just keep going. You see the power of our trained mind. If we're training it in anger and hatred, we can't just say, I'm going to take hatred out like we take the garbage out. We're wired this way. You see the depths of the problem. But at the same time, it wasn't the same, because it wasn't 100% hatred. It was like 99%. And that one little percent is your true nature. And what we do is we train the mind to abide in that 1%. And although hatred will come up again and again and again, people will look at some other person and say, how can they be Buddhist? That guy is such a jerk. But he's less of a jerk than he was a lifetime ago. And that's what we're doing. And the important thing is, when you discover the deathless part of your mind, then we're not killing people to keep this one lifetime going. And it's said at death, what happens? Body dissolves, this incredible attachment that we have. Tibetans say the mind is 19 times more powerful, because we're not obsessed about this material existence. That 19 times more powerful is a danger, because if you have a negative thought, it goes very forcefully in that direction. But if you have a positive thought, if you know the deathless nature of the mind, or if you see one of these Buddha figures arise, you can go to Buddhahood in that moment. It's more powerful than life, but everything you do in life matters, because we're training the mind for that free moment. So, okay. All right, that's enough for me this morning. Forgive my prolixity, right? Yeah, Keen.
Is Zen koan and the Fantas, are they kind of similar?
In a very profound way, yeah. Different method, that's all. Okay, all right. Let's take a tea break, and Kempo's here. I'm not sure what we're practicing today, but we'll discuss that.
So I hope people go out for Zambala text.
We'll have some to supply. Zambala is the empowerment that was given to us by Tritsa Rinpoche, who was here last month, and it's a form of bodhisattva, of compassion, but especially generates wealth. So everybody likes Zambala.